So good morning, everyone. I hope that you're all doing well and that you have enjoyed till today all the statistics training we have been looking at. And today we will look at energy prices and energy efficiency indicators. After having looked at the commodity statistics, at energy balances, CO2 emissions, now we will go a bit further and look at the other data that we need to collect to have a more broader picture of the energy situation of the country, and also all the different energy efficiency indicators that are needed to track your climate goals, and also to understand in more details at the end use data that we need to track for saving energy. So later on, I will be joined by my colleagues, Domenico and Yungyu. Domenico works on energy prices and Yungyu works on energy efficiency indicators data, and they will join us after the presentations for question and answers. So this is again the agenda. Today we are looking at the last of the statistics course, and from next week you will start with the modeling part. I will take the opportunity also to wish all the Muslim people a Eid Mubarak for next week, as I will not be, I will not participate in the training next week, but I will come back on the third week. So I wish you all a happy holidays for next week. And before we start with the training, just some quick housekeeping rules. Now you're used to it, so everything is virtual. You're all muted, but if you have any question for us, you can raise your hand, but ideally use the question and answer box to write your questions to us. And if you have any additional questions, do not hesitate to write to me or to Arnaud or to the Africa program mailbox. So this is the agenda for today. So the presentations will be divided into two parts. First, we will look at energy prices. We will see why energy prices are important, the key statistical concepts to know on energy prices, but also on comparability. And then we will look at a small exercise together. Then the second part will be on energy efficiency indicators. We will see why it is important to develop such indicators and what information is already available from the energy balances and what further data are needed to track energy efficiency and how to collect those information. And again, we will look at a small exercise on energy efficiency indicators. So let's start with energy prices. Before we look at the presentation, let's do some quick interactive questions. So can you please start connecting to www.menti.com? At the same time, I will share my screen for you to get the code. So please connect to www.menti.com and use the code that appears up on the screen. So 39, 34, 96, and 40. The code is 39, 34, 96, and 40. I just put it in the chat box as well. So I'll give you some time to connect. Please participate. It's interesting for us to know who among you already know a bit about energy prices and taxes, if you use such information, and so it's very important to participate actively. So please connect to www.menti.com and use the code 39, 34, 96, and 40. And the first question is, what are the different components in the end user price paid by the consumer for energy commodities such as electricity and natural gas? So this is an open-ended question. You can write down what comes to your mind about What are the different components in the end user price paid by the consumer for energy commodities such as electricity and natural gas? So when you pay your electricity bill, what are you exactly paying for? What does it include? So here you need to write down. I don't see any answers arriving. So, so someone said fuel costs, service charges, transmission costs. Yes, excellent. We have many answers arriving now. Operation costs, subsidy, tariff. So subsidy, not really, because when a price is subsidized, it means that you're not paying for the amount that is subsidized. The government is paying the subsidy and you're paying what's left. So there's VAT, exactly. So you're paying for taxes. You're paying for the cost of producing the electricity. Yes, so the different cost of the plant, the fuel cost to produce the electricity, um, the tariffs, transmission costs, generation costs. Exactly, that's it. So VAT, yes, metering costs, service charges. Excellent. Exactly. So when we pay for electricity or natural gas, we are paying the ex-tax price, which includes the different cost of producing that fuel, and how it get to your home, and then you pay for different taxes. So there are value-added tax, there's environmental tax, more and more now. There are excise tax. So this is what we will look at today at the different components of a price. And it's important for us to know what we are paying for when we buy a product. So very good. We have many answers, more or less covering for all the different components of prices. So excellent. So let's move to the second question now. So the second question is, are you aware of price data tracking in your country? Yes or no? Do you know if in your country prices data are tracked? We have two person who already said no, four that said no, some that are saying yes. So it's a bit half-half. Some of you know about price data tracking, some know. Give you some more time to reply. So it's 50-50. Half said yes and half said no. Excellent. It's interesting for us to know, especially about the yes, and later today we will see who, what are the different institutions that are tracking those prices. Next question. So, do you know if prices data feed the policy work in your country? So some are saying yes, more are saying yes than no. Excellent. So it's good that some of you know that prices data feed the policy work in your country. Excellent. So let's look at another question. For those who replied yes, who is responsible for the price data collection in your country? So do you know who is responsible for the price data collection in your country? So here you can write the different institutions that you might know are collecting prices data in the country. NBS, so NERC, NBT, NNPC, so Ministry of Power. So this is interesting for us to know the different institutions that collect prices data in your country, and then we can compare it with the prices data that we have at the IEA and see if we can increase the coverage of the data. So so thank you for sharing with us the institutions that you know might have data for energy prices and taxes. Researchers, this is good. So let's look at the next question now. So what are the challenges for prices data collection in your country? Do you know the different challenges that the institutions might be facing for collecting prices data in the country? So think a bit why it's complicated to collect prices data. For some fuels, it's easier to collect. Well, easier, it's a big word. So it's easier to collect for some fuels, but for others, it's more challenging. So do you know some of the challenges that your country might be facing for collecting prices data in the country? Weak monitoring mechanism, poor data governance, weak accountability system. Yes. Reluctance to increase information. That's true. Sometimes there's a competitiveness issue, financial challenges. Yes, it's costly to collect data anyway, any data. Lack of awareness, indeed. Bureaucratic bottlenecks. Yes, multiple agencies. Yes, we need to coordinate better. Unwillingness. Yes, because sometimes it's not a priority for the country to collect such information because of lack of knowledge of the importance of collecting such data. Lack of training. Yes, sometimes institutions don't know what data to collect, how to collect, what methodology to use. Complexity, yes, it's not, there's a lot, as we just saw before, there's a lot of components that make a price, and so it's a bit complex to collect data. Insecurity. Very good. So I think that was the last. Yes, the next one is on energy efficiency, and we'll look at that later on. So now let's move to the presentation. I will share again my screen.
Let's delve into the subject. Why are energy prices important? Energy prices are important because they affect our lives as consumers and the competitiveness of a private enterprise, and therefore the economy of our country. End users' energy prices are influenced by price movements in the raw commodity markets. For instance, crude oil spot price market. The international spot price market is in turn affected to major events such as economic developments or even natural disasters. In the graph, we can see the step price decreases caused by global financial crisis in 2008, 2009, and the oversupply in the market in year 2014. More recently, we can see the effect of the COVID pandemic on the market, with the reduction of the price linked to the reduction of the consumption. But the cost of the raw material and the international markets doesn't capture the full story. In fact, the end-use price paid by consumers is subject to taxation that might represent the major share of the final prices. Why do governments tax energy commodities? The taxation of energy products may pursue different objectives. The first objective could be public revenue generation. In the short, medium term, energy demand is relatively inelastic, making energy products good targets for revenue generation. Another objective could be internalizing the environmental and health costs associated to emissions or other types of pollution. The third objective of taxation is to drive the change. High taxation on the most polluting fossil fuels can help shift consumption towards a less polluting and therefore less taxed energy commodities. Tracking energy prices is important also because they represent a significant share of our daily lives expenditures. For households, for example, the direct expenditure on energy might represent up to 17% of the household spending. The same can be applied to industry. Industry competitiveness is greatly affected by energy costs. This is true especially for energy-intensive processes, such as aluminum production, for which energy costs can represent around 40% of the production costs. For all those reasons, it is very important to track energy prices in our country and to have an international methodology that allows us to compare prices across the world. Here at the IEA, we track energy prices across the world in the Energy Prices Database. The map on this slide shows gasoline prices across the world drawn from this database. An accurate database is the basis for conducting accurate and robust analysis on the energy scenario and for assessing the competitiveness of a country. Such data also allows for evidence-based policymaking and energy transition planning. Robust data allow to draw comparison to regional differences. For example, thanks to this dataset, we can say that consumers in Africa pays on average the gasoline 30% less than the average of the world and 50% less than European consumers. This dataset enables also further analysis, such as the one showed with this graph. This graph illustrates gasoline price levels across countries based on GDP per capita, and it is taken from the IEA commentary on gasoline prices across the world. In this graph, we see that price levels are, in most countries, linked to the economic conjuncture of the country itself. Based on GDP per capita, we can identify 4 clusters of countries. Many developing countries fall in the cluster at the bottom left of the graph, since their governments often keep prices low to increase energy access. Please feel free to refer to the IEA commentary for further information and analysis on this topic. As mentioned before, it is important to have a common methodology for tracking energy price. This allows to have a solid international benchmark and comparable data. So let's now turn to the IEA methodology, which provides for such a common methodology and which has been adopted and used by other international organizations. End-use energy price is the sum of 2 subcomponents: ex-tax price and taxation, which is the sum of value-added tax and excise taxation. Having information on these components allows us to have a more solid understanding of the situation in the country and to draw policy implication and guide policy making. The ex-tax price includes all the costs incurred for producing the final product throughout the supply chain, except taxes. This includes the cost of raw materials, manufacturing costs, distribution costs, and profit. The excise taxation, instead, is generally levied on a volume basis and excludes the VAT component. This taxation might have different policy objectives and includes CO2 taxes, other environmental taxes, motor fuel taxes, emergency stock fees, and any other taxation applied to the commodity. And the last component is the VAT taxation. VAT taxation is a consumption tax on value added, and it is generally applied to the sum of the ex-tax price and excise taxation. As of 2020, over 170 countries had VAT or an equivalent taxes in place. To better understand each of those price components and how these can affect the end user price, let's have a look at a simple example of 2 hypothetical countries, A and B. Country A and country B have 2 different ex-tax prices for gasoline. This may depend on the different relative scarcity of the oil resources in the 2 countries, or on different refinery and distribution costs. The government in country A decided to implement a lower excise taxation compared to country B, maybe to compensate the high ex-tax price. Country A has also a lower VAT rate compared to country B. So overall, the total taxation on gasoline in country A is lower than in country B. If we apply the VAT rate to the sum of the ex-tax and excise taxation, we obtain the VAT amount, which is summed to the excise tax, gives us the total taxation for fuel. As mentioned, the total taxation in country A is lower than the one in country B, and this makes the end user price lower despite the higher costs along the supply chain. Now let's delve into the methodology to calculate representative end user prices. What is the representative price for a country? Energy prices may vary across regions and provinces of the same country. For example, this map shows more expensive gasoline prices in the western parts of the United States compared to the prices in the southeastern states. Again, using an example may help better understand. Let's consider a country, which we will call Statisland, with two provinces, Eastern Statisland and Western Statisland. In Eastern Statisland, the price of diesel is $0.5 per liter, while in Western Statisland, gasoline is more expensive at $1 per liter. Diesel consumption is 500 kiloliters in the Eastern Statisland and just 100 kiloliters in the Western Statisland. If we calculated the simple arithmetical average of the two prices, we would have a $0.75 per liter. Is this a representative price? The answer is no, because as we can see from the input data, consumption is 5 times higher in the region with the lower price. Therefore, if we were to compute the simple average, we would not take into account this difference in consumption. In order to calculate a representative price, we need to weigh prices by consumption. If we take consumption into account, we obtain $0.558 per liter, which is the representative price for the country. When calculating a representative price, another important concept is the difference between prices and tariffs. In the data collection undertaken for our data tracking, we are interested in the prices, namely the average rate per unit actually paid by the consumers, no matter what is the price structure for the commodity in the country. Again, let's take a look at an example, this time on electricity prices. We all know that in general, the electricity bill has two components, fixed charges and the variable charges. The fixed charges pay for the connection to the grid, and it is not linked to the energy consumption. The variable component, on the contrary, is based on the quantity of energy consumed each month. In this case, to calculate the representative end user price for a user, we need to calculate the total electricity bill and divide it by the energy consumed. The total bill is the sum of fixed charges, 10 euros in this case, and the variable charges, which are 0.1 euros per kilowatt hour times 150 kilowatt hours. The total paid is 25 euros. The total now should be divided by the energy consumed, which is again 150 kilowatt hour. This gives the representative price for this consumer, which is 0.17 euros per kilowatt hour. To conclude, energy is an important component of our lives and for the economic development of our countries. And energy is a significant expenditure for our budgets. A solid energy price tracking system, one that allows having comprehensive and comparable data, is a key requirement for evidence-based policymaking and policy choices to increase the energy affordability and foster a green and just transition. IEA stands ready to advise and support countries along this path. Please contact us to receive more information on how IEA can support your country develop more solid energy price tracking systems that will support sound and effective policy choices. Thanks.
So I hope that this presentation on energy prices has been useful today to you. And now we have been joined by Domenico Latanzio, who is an expert on energy prices, and he will help answer all the questions that you may have. So please take the advantage of us having Domenico with us now to send us questions through the Q&A box. For the moment, I don't see any specific question.
Just maybe to introduce myself and to open the floor. I'm Domenico Lattanzio. I'm responsible for the energy prices and taxes data collection. And specifically for the case that we are of Nigeria, we are collecting data through NBS. So I saw that many of you highlighted that NBS is collecting data. Very useful, the information about the electricity and collected by NERC that we are currently not tracking because we are tracking for Nigeria only gasoline, diesel, LPG for household and kerosene. So very happy to have a chat if necessary with you. If you please feel free to reach out at the prices@iea.org. And really, we are looking forward to engage with you. And if you are responsible for the collection of those prices, any prices in your country, we would be really interested in having this kind of conversation with you because it helps us. Sometimes it's only just pointing at the website and at the right place because this is data collection for Nigeria and for many other countries that are not OECD members is based on our own research. And with some specific countries, and this would be the case for you, we try to engage and to have a close relationship that is like mutual. It's beneficial for both sides, I think, because we can provide the data that we are collecting, and we can discuss together how it's the best methodology to collect. And you have like also a clear view of what's happening in the other countries, neighbors or other countries far away from you. So this is just to put a bit of the context of our data collection. I'm happy to answer any question you might have on your on Nigeria or any other countries in the region or in the world.
Thanks a lot, Domenico. I think we have Mr. Ahmad Amin who might have a question for you. So I just gave him the permission to speak.
Yeah, good morning, everybody.
Hello.
Ahmed Bafa. Hello, good morning.
Hello. Good morning, we can hear you.
Yeah, I am Ahmed Bafa Amin from National Bureau of Statistics. I have this question to ask. What are the different ways of tracking the solid energy prices of a country like Nigeria in particular?
So what are the different
ways of tracking the solid energy prices of a country like Nigeria, please?
Okay, I think we see different ways of doing so, and it depends also on always by the situation, the market situation, and the type of energy commodity that we want to track. So, for example, in the situation where the gasoline price is fixed by an authority, most of the time we refer to the price fixed by the authority if it's the best available data. For other countries, for example, European countries, they put in place surveys that survey the pump stations every Monday, for example, or every week, every month, depending on the resources and the system. A different aspect and a different data collection might happen for the electricity, where the TSO have all the data that are needed for computing the weighted average price or for knowing the average price of the country. So these are, for example, two examples, either surveys or through the bills with the TSO or the companies that are responsible for the distribution of the electricity. Of course, those two ways are always different in terms of delay of the data. So whenever you put in place a survey, we see, for example, European countries, they have a survey in place and every week they publish the average price for gasoline. Whenever we are relying on reports from the national companies for electricity, you might have a delay of 6 months, 1 quarter, 1 year, depending on how fast the companies are able to compute and to put together the report. So those are basically the two methods that I have in mind now. And that, of course, it's impossible to survey 100% of the pump stations, and this needs to be done by samples.
That is in Europe, not in Africa. Is that?
Sorry?
That is in Europe, not in Africa. It's not easy to survey the pump stations 100% in Europe, not in Africa, because you have not started doing anything in Africa. Is that?
I think not everywhere.
You are talking of Europe, I'm sorry, not Africa.
So we need to rely on.
All right, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yeah, thank
and
you.
Sorry, Mr. Amin.
Yeah.
And you are responsible for collecting the data and putting together, issuing the monthly bulletin that we are using, or you work in MBS?
Yes.
So you work on this subject.
Exactly. Yeah, we are to have this point now. Then when we go back to the office, we see our seniors and advise them on this way you are advising us to go about it. But we are yet to start collecting the data at now.
Interesting.
Okay.
So I think that after the training, we will organize bilateral meetings on energy prices and energy efficiency indicators. So we will get in contact with you and have a more, in-depth meeting just with the people who work on the subject, and we can really assist you in and give you ideas on how to go further on the development of those for the data collection.
You.
So
we really appreciate.
No, that it's our job as well.
Yes, thank you.
So we have a new question in the question and answer box. Domenico, is it correct to say that prices applies to commodities generally while tariffs applies to only electricity?
Yes, this is like true. It can be true also for natural gas, for example, where you can have tariffs. It's mostly so it's the case that you have tariffs whenever you have a network, for example. And so whenever you're paying, the tariff includes only the price that you're paying for using that amount of energy commodity, but not using the grid. So whenever there is a grid, a network, you need also to pay for the network. And was decided here at the IEA was decided to talk about prices and not tariffs themselves, because whenever you talk about tariffs, if you compare then different countries, you might end up with a distorted way of your understanding of the price in the country. Because let's imagine that we have a country A where all the costs of the grid are embedded in the tariff, and you have only not connection costs. And in that case, the tariff would be higher because it includes also the network. In a country B, for example, you might have a different way of computing the bill, where you have half of the price that is related to the grid connection, and the half of the price that you're paying for the tariff. So to avoid this difference in policies, we decided to have prices, and not to have prices, not a representative price, and not the tariff. So we know in general, on average, how much a user is paying for 1 kilowatt hour. And that kilowatt hour is not only the use of the natural gas, but also the use of the grid. So we put together and we end up with this solution. Of course, this is not applicable for pump stations. So for gasoline, where you're not paying actually for the grid, because the distribution is done in a different way. And in that case, you just have a price, there is no tariff there. So it's true for electricity tariffs, but also can be true for natural gas.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Domenico. So please let us know if you have more questions on prices before we move on to the exercise session. So I think there's no more questions, Domenico. So thanks a lot for joining this morning to help answer the questions. And anyway, if you have more questions or you need more information, you can write to prices@iea.org or write to me and I will forward to Domenico as well without problem. And for those who might be interested in joining our bilateral meetings that we will organize soon, we will contact you, but you can also contact us to show us your interest in joining the meetings, and we will make sure that you are in the list of the people that we invite to the meetings after. So thank you, Domenico. And
Thank you
now
very much all, and looking forward to hearing from you. Bye.
Bye. So I just shared now the Excel file with the exercises. So there was an exercise on energy prices specifically, where you had information on data for households, you had taxes, you had data for industries, data from the power plants, and then you had to fill out the different components that make the prices for each, for household, industry, and for electricity. So the first question was, after discussing with the gas suppliers and the National Statistics Office, you obtain data from the household survey, tax information, and revenue. So question one, calculate the average natural gas price for household, industry, and electric utilities. And we gave you a few hints. So first, to calculate the average total price for household, then to calculate the rest of the data, knowing that households do not pay excise taxes, and then to calculate the 2019 values for industry and electricity generation. So the information that we have for household is average spending for heating and cooking by gas in euro. And you also have the average consumption of natural gas in megawatt hour gross calorific value. So, and then you had taxes information. You know that VAT, it's 20%, and excise tax, it's 31.9 euro per megawatt hour gross calorific value. So, and we know that households do not pay excise taxes. So in the table here, we have to fill the highlighted yellow cells. So for excise tax, you know that households do not pay, so you put a 0 here. And you know that household pay 20% VAT. So this is, let's do all the taxes information. For industry, you know that industry pay 31.9 euros. So if you round it up, it's 32 megawatt hour, euro per megawatt hour, but they don't pay VAT. So industry is exempted of VAT. So your VAT amount is 0, and your total tax for industry, it's just 32 euro. And for electricity, natural gas price for electricity generation, electricity plants pay excise taxes, so it's 32, but they don't pay VAT, and your total tax for electricity plants, it's just 32. So we have done all the taxes information. Now let's do the prices one. So you know that households spent 3,318 euro, and their average consumption of natural gas in megawatt hour, it's 2.4. So the total price that they pay, that includes everything, it's your average spending divided by your average consumption. That gives you your total price. Once you have your total price, you can calculate your ex-tax price. Your ex-tax price is your total price minus the 20%. So you calculate, you take your total price, you divide by 1 plus 20%, less 20%, sorry. So you get this number. And then from your ex-tax price, you can calculate your total VAT amount, So it's 20% times the ex-tax price, which is give you 227, and your total tax is just your VAT amount. So that was for household. For industry, we know that this is the revenue from industrial consumers, excluding excise tax. So here it gives you an indication that it's for X tax. And then you also know the amount of natural gas sold to industries in gigawatt hour. So your ex-tax price is the amount of revenue divided by the amount of gas sold in gigawatt hour. But here you have to make a conversion of unit. Here it's in billion gigawatt, but here we are looking for euro megawatt. So then you multiply by 10 to the power of 6 to get in euro per megawatt. So we know the ex-tax price, we know the total tax, and your total price, it's just the sum of the two, ex-tax plus tax. Now for natural gas price for electricity generation, oops, sorry. So here again, we know the average purchase price of natural gas, excluding excise tax. But here we are looking for data in gigawatt, in gross calorific values. But here the average price, it's in net calorific values. So here you need to convert from net to gross. So you multiply by 0.9, you get your ex-tax price. We know the VAT, the total tax, there's no VAT, there's only excise tax. So your total price is ex-tax price plus total tax. That gives you 693. So that was we have filled all the information that we need for this exercise for question 1. The question 2 is calculate the growth rate of natural gas price between 2010 and 2019. So here, now we need to fill the red cells. So here it's just a simple growth rate. You take the value of 2019 for household, you divide by the price of 2010, and you minus 1 to get the growth rate. And here we have an 18% growth rate between 19 and 2010. Can you say that prices increase in 2010? If not, how could you modify the price to have a better comparison in time? So here, we cannot say that prices have increased even though we have a positive growth rate. And the reason is that here we have not taken into account inflation. And so we need a deflator. And in this case, for household, it's a consumer price index. Since these are household prices, so we need to apply a CPI. So here, what do we do to recalculate the price after applying, taking into account, correcting for prices? So here we have the information of CPI for 2010 and 2019. And if we recalculate the prices for 2010, you take your price without any correction, you multiply it, you divide it by 0.9, and you would get your price, which is corrected. And same for 2019, you take your total price in 2019, you divide by the CPI, and you would get the prices that have been adjusted for inflation. Now, if we recalculate, the last question is using the available information, recalculate the price for 2010 and the new growth rate. So we have already calculated the new prices, and now we can calculate the new growth rate. And you can see that after adjusting for the prices, we have a decline in the growth rate of -5%, whereas without any adjustment, we had an increase. So it's very important to take into account inflation and to adjust your prices accordingly. So that was the exercise for energy prices. I really recommend you, if you have not done it, to work on it. It really helps you better understand the different concepts that we have looked out, and also how important it is to compare data in an appropriate way. So this was the end of the prices section, and now we will move to the second part of the presentation on energy efficiency indicators. So let's do a bit of Menti. So can you please connect to www.menti.com? I see some people already replied to this one. So please connect, and it's the same code as before. So 39, 34, 96, and 40. Can you please connect to Menti and use the code 39, 34, 96, and 40? The first question is, what do you think when we speak about energy efficiency? So we receive already a few answers: wastage, quality, value for money, conservation, more output with less input, optimization at low energy requirement. So what do you think about when we speak about energy efficiency? So we are getting a few answers here: energy losses, use of efficient technology, cost reduction, less carbon, conservation of resources. So very good. So I think all of you know a bit about what energy efficiency means, and so let's move to the second question. I see some more answers coming. Very good. So I think you got the point. Energy efficiency is very important. It's important for climate. It's important to for conservation of resources, and it's important that we use the best technologies to use less energy and do not waste this precious resource. So let's look at next question now. What is energy efficiency? So is it consuming less energy to provide the same service, such as using LED bulbs instead of incandescents? Is it to consume the same amount of energy to provide more services, so increase production of steel? Is it to consume less energy because of a change in service? So for example, if you have an economic restructuring from heavy industry to services, or is it to consume less energy and provide less services? For example, if you use your your bicycle instead of your car to go to work, is that energy efficiency? So here you have the possibility of inputting two right answers, because there's two right answers. So what is energy efficiency? So the first two ones are getting some good more answers. So this is very good. We get 20 participants who replied. So 18 of you think that it's to consume less energy to provide the same service. And we have some of you that says it's to consume the same energy to provide more services. And let's look at the right answer. The right answer is indeed to consume less energy to provide the same service and to consume same energy to provide more services. So you got it right. Next question. Do you think that energy intensity of the economy, which is calculated as the total energy supply divided by GDP, do you think that it is a good indicator of energy efficiency? So, do you think the energy intensity of the economy is a good indicator of energy efficiency? So many of you says yes. Is energy intensity the best indicator of energy efficiency? What do you think? So most of you said yes. Only 6 said no, it's not a good indicator. Let's see the right answer. And the right answer is no. It's a, um, it's not the best indicator to track energy efficiency of a country. We need to collect more detailed data than just the total energy supply. We need to collect end use data to have a proper indication of how the country is doing in terms of energy efficiency. Exactly. So we got a participant that says it's a good indicator, but it's not the best. Exactly. In the beginning, I think it's okay to use energy intensity to see how the economy is doing in terms of energy efficiency. But if we want to look more deeper, we need to collect more in detailed data. And this is what we will look at during the presentation. My colleague will tell you more about that. So that was the end of the Menti, and now let's move to the presentation.
So why energy efficiency is important and why do we need energy efficiency indicators? Usually, when we think about energy efficiency and why it's necessary, we'll think about the reduction in energy consumption. However, there are many other benefits from energy efficiency. Here we can see what we call the energy efficiency flower, representing multiple benefits from energy efficiency improvement. Those benefits can be economic, social, environmental. For example, by increasing employment, increasing energy security, or by reducing harmful emissions. This is why many countries have set energy efficiency targets, and this is why it's important to have end-use data to track the progress of energy efficiency policies and to be able to set the correct target for those policies. Here we can see policy design examples, but also benchmarking exercises, which are an important application of this kind of data. However, there is still a very high portion of energy consumption that is not covered by energy efficiency policies, and this represents a large potential for action. Only 35% of the global energy consumption is subject to mandatory efficiency standards. And it's estimated that in Africa, only 2% of energy demand is covered by energy efficiency policies. This is why it's very important to have detailed data in order to be able to study energy efficiency trends in depth, to know the priority areas and where we stand, to set the targets, and to track and monitor the actions. But now, let's see what kind of data are already available from the energy balances. Energy balances give a very useful piece of information, and combined with some macroeconomic data allows to calculate aggregated indicators, like for example, the energy intensity. However, there are limitations in terms of the disaggregation of the data. For example, in an energy balance, the residential and the services sector are represented as total, while in order to study energy efficiency, we would need a further disaggregation by end use. For example, space cooling and space heating. One of the possible starting points to identify priorities in the breakdown of final energy consumption by sector. Usually this information can be easily extracted from the energy balance of a country. So, for example, in this case, we can identify that the residential sector is the most consuming, so it's likely to be considered a priority sector for energy savings. However, we need more detailed data to better assess this. Like, for example, the consumption by end use, such as cooking, water heating, or space cooling, and the related activity data, like number of occupied dwellings or surface. Not having proper data could lead to wrong policy decisions and actions. Let's see now an example of widely used, the energy intensity. We can see a figure illustrating the energy intensity trends for different regions since 2000 to 2018. Energy intensity is commonly used as a proxy for energy efficiency. However, the indicator is too high level and includes different factors, such as the structure of an economy or the activity, besides real efficiency. So in order to study efficiency, we need more detailed data. Let's see another example where we study the residential sector trends, starting by using the most aggregated data to using the most detailed one. If we analyze the residential consumption over 20 years, shown in the graph in the blue line, we see that there has been an increase as a whole, plus 15%. However, we can see that the consumption per capita, the red line, is at the same levels at the end of the period, more or less. If we go to the more detailed data indicators, for example, the consumption of energy for space heating divided by occupied dwellings or by floor area, we can see a dramatic reduction over the analyzed period. So this means that even if residential energy consumption increased and residential consumption per capita did more or less remain stable, important efficiency improvements are witnessed in space heating. The residential per capita indicator did not show any change even with the big efficiency improvements in some end uses, probably because of the increased use of new appliances, such as smartphones, computers, tablets. So all in all, it is essential to choose the most appropriate indicator depending on what do we want to observe. If we just look at the total residential energy consumption, we would observe that the total final energy consumption has increased by 15%. However, this does not mean that we are less efficient now. For instance, the residential space heating energy consumption per floor area has decreased 35%. So it's really important to choose the proper indicator depending on the message we want to give and what we want to observe. So what drives energy intensity then? The efficiency progress is one of the drivers. For example, more efficient industrial processes will contribute to a lower overall intensity. But there are also other factors like the increase of the activity, for example, the increase of population, more houses, more cars, or the structural change of an economy. For example, a country switching from the industry to the service sector, which is less energy intensive, that also affect the energy intensity. So it's really important to differentiate which improvements come from improvement in energy efficiency to track the impact of energy efficiency policies. Here, for example, we can see how energy efficiency helps to decrease the overall energy consumption, while the increase in the activity contributes to the opposite. So what additional data are needed in order to study energy efficiency? As we have seen from the energy balances information, we can create some energy indicators such as the total final consumption per population. However, those indicators are not specific enough to monitor energy efficiency. In order to study energy efficiency and obtain energy efficiency indicators, we need end-use data or even more disaggregated data. However, the greater the disaggregation, the more data are needed, and usually this also comes with higher cost. Collecting data is costly, but enables a better design, monitoring, and evaluation of policy. Not having proper data could lead, as we said before, to incorrect decisions and actions, and as a consequence, to even higher costs. Also, in order to develop indicators, apart from energy consumption data, it is essential to also collect activity data. The activity data are sector-specific. It could be a physical production of a certain commodity, like cement or steel, floor area, or the distance driven by a vehicle. Combining energy consumption and activity data, we can obtain efficiency indicators that explain how much energy is needed to provide a certain service. For instance, how much energy is needed to produce a ton of steel. Let's now see which data we can collect for every sector. And let's start with the residential sector. In order to calculate energy efficiency indicators for the residential sector, the IEA recommends collecting energy consumption data by end use. So, for example, space heating and cooling, water heating, cooking, lighting, as well as energy consumption of different appliances, such as dishwashers or televisions. It's also important to collect data on heating degree days and cooling degree days in order to be able to correct space heating and space cooling energy consumption from the year-to-year variation of the temperature. In other words, when we analyze energy efficiency indicators for space heating and space cooling, we want to observe change in the energy consumption resulting from the energy efficiency improvements and not from the climate effect over this consumption. If the winter is harder, then it's very likely that people are going to consume more energy for space heating, for example. And we want to avoid this effect. Regarding the activity data for the residential sector, we could collect information on the number of dwellings, particularly occupied dwellings, residential floor area, as well as stocks of different types of appliances. We should also pay attention to the activity data we use for our indicators. For example, if we use total dwellings, we will also account for abandoned dwellings and secondary residences. Therefore, in order to avoid counting in efficiency empty buildings which does not consume, we should exclude vacation homes and unoccupied dwellings. And so this way we keep the same boundaries between the energy consumption and the activities related to this energy consumption. Let's now have a look at what we can do in terms of data collection for the service sector. For energy, we can also collect data by end use. So for example, space heating and cooling, lighting, other energy uses in service buildings, and also non-building energy use, for example, street lighting. We can also collect electricity and other fuel consumption data and floor area by IC categories instead of by end use. But it's also good to do for both end use and IC categories. And the most relevant activity data would be the value added, the floor area, or the number of employees, for example. The next sector is industry, and for energy, in the IEA, we collect data for 19 major ISIC subsectors. And when it's possible, we encourage more detailed data collections. For example, energy consumed to produce aluminum or cement, since this data collection allows for physical indicators that are more detailed than the major ISIC categories. And when it comes to activity data, we focus on the value added created by a given subsector. But for certain energy intensive and homogeneous industries like paper and iron and steel, we can collect also the data on the physical production, such as the tons of steel produced. And finally, the transport sector. It might seem a little bit more complicated than the other sectors because here we differentiate between transport segments and modes. So segments include passenger and freight transport, while modes refer to road, rail, air, and water. Regarding the activity for the transport sector, we want to observe how much and how far we can move. So for instance, how many passengers or tons of goods we can move and how far. To measure this, we use vehicle stocks, vehicle kilometers, passenger kilometers, ton kilometers, and we calculate passenger kilometers and ton kilometers as the total distance traveled by all the vehicle stocks that we are analyzing, multiplied by the occupancy for passenger transport or by the load factor in case of the freight transport. But how can we collect all this data we are mentioning? So in 2009, the IEA members countries agreed on the new energy efficiency indicators data collection. Thanks to the cooperation with international experts, an Excel template was developed, and you can find this template already in the IEA website. And with this template, the IEA collects both energy and activity data for all the 4 sectors presented: residential, services, industry, and transport. In December, we published the energy efficiency indicators database and a report called Energy Efficiency Indicators Highlight, where we include all the countries that collaborate with us, not only members. We are open to collaborate with any country that would like to do so. And this report, of course, is also available online free of charge. And on top of that, the IEA has also cooperated with AFREC to develop a questionnaire for energy efficiency, particularly for the residential sector. So on the country level, the IEA differentiates 4 main data collection methods. And firstly, before starting any new data collection, it's good to make sure that this data is not already collected. So for instance, if you need some activity data for transport sector, it is possible that the Ministry of Transport is already has this data. So it's very important to map where all the data that I need might be located. If you're sure that these data are not available, you can start your own data collection by launching, for example, a new survey, or you can even decide for a less expensive options, which could be expanding an already existing survey. For example, adding some transport questions on a household surveys. Another method is metering and measuring. that is relatively costly, but really effective if you want to measure efficiency of some specific equipment. And here we can also find, for example, smart meters, which are more and more used nowadays. And we also have modeling, which is the last of the four methods, and it can be complementary to surveys and metering or used standalone. For instance, by using activity data and total energy consumption data from the energy balances as input to estimate energy consumption by end use, for example. The IEA has developed two manuals. The first one is the Fundamentals on Statistics and provides guidance on how to collect data and how to develop those efficiency indicators. And it includes also a compilation of existing practices of data collection from across the world. And the second one is the Essentials for Policymakers, which advise on how to develop those indicators as well, and particularly how to interpret the energy efficiency indicators. Both manuals are available on the IEA website in English, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, and also French. Before starting any data collection, it's always useful to have a look at what other countries have done. For this purpose, the IEA developed the country practice database, which is a very useful resource to learn from each other. It's a very powerful tool worth consulting before undertaking any new data collection, because it allows seeing what other countries did and to take an advantage of their experience. For example, if you are planning to develop a new data collection, such as a new household survey, for example, you can check what other countries have done and even the details of that survey, the results, and even the questionnaire of that survey. And also, if you have a country practice that you wish to share, please contact us so we can make it available for others and others can benefit from your expertise. I would like to conclude with some key messages. First of all, detailed energy and activity end-use data are crucial for well-informed and effective policies. These data are essential for identifying priority sectors and understanding energy efficiency trends and monitoring policy effectiveness. Therefore, it's extremely important to raise people's awareness of the detailed data needs and underline benefits of country-specific data collection and analysis. It's also important to benefit from the experience of other countries and organizations, as well as contributing to this. So we invite all countries that want to start collaborating with us on end-use data and efficiency indicators to reach out, and we can discuss in more detail the potential collaborations we could develop with you.
So that was the end of the presentation on energy efficiency indicators. And I'm joined by Young-Yu Park, who works on collecting data for energy efficiency indicators at the IEA. And he will be very happy to answer any question you will have. Hi, Young-Yu.
Hi, Jackie. Thank you for the introduction.
So we have a new question that arrived in the question and answer. So please, what's the link for the energy efficiency indicators template? So Young-Yu, maybe you can send a link to the IEA website where we have the energy efficiency indicators questionnaire template.
Yes.
So on the IEA websites, yes, thank you. So you just send it to all panelists, I think.
Yes, I think so.
So you didn't send it to the attendees as well. So I just did that now.
Okay.
And I'll put it in the Q&A box as well.
Yeah, I shared a link for the whole topics questionnaire. So in this page, you can find energy efficiency in the middle of the page. so you can download it freely and please have a look when you have interest.
Yes, so all the material is available freely on our website, so you have access to the questionnaire, but also to the 2 manuals that was mentioned on during the presentation. There's also the database for best practices, which is very useful and important, especially when you're starting to develop such indicators. I think it's very useful to see what other countries have already done, what type of surveys they have put in place to collect the data, so that you don't have to start everything from scratch. Other countries have already started work on that, and you can really inspire yourself and see what's useful to you and take what is interesting for you and apply it to the country. If you have any other questions for Young Yu, please take the opportunity that we have him with us today. Uh, Maybe if I can add something, we will also organize bilateral meetings on energy efficiency indicators after the training, most probably early September. So please, if you have an interest on the subject and you know you are working on it, you are collecting information, please drop me an email so that we can make sure that you are also included in the invitation email that we will send later. And also at the IEA, for the moment, we collect data mostly for OECD countries, plus a few other CETP countries, such as, and in Africa, there's only South Africa that we are collecting data for at the moment. So we are really interested to add more countries to the database, and really looking forward to cooperate with you on the topic. So please, if you have questions, don't hesitate before we move on to the exercise session.
Not only the question, if you want to share your experience on
Exactly.
this topic and this area, please feel free to raise your hand or
We have someone that just raised his hand. Let me see. So we have Mr. Ibrahim Sulu that have raised his hand. Um, would you like to ask a question live, Mr. Ibrahim? I don't know. Mr. Ibrahim, I have given you the permission to speak. So if you have any question for Yung Yu, let us know.
Yes. Hello, good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, please, it's not a question, but a comment.
Perfect.
Yes. I work with Energy Commission of Nigeria.
Okay.
I'm the head of Energy Management Department.
Yes.
Currently, we have 4 teams. One on energy management and transport sector, another one for industry, another one for electricity industry, and the 4th is for buildings, both residential, public service, and commercial buildings. The 5th one, which is not activated, is for petroleum industry. So please, I'll forward my details to Adam for inclusion in your September program. And we really hope and look forward for much assistance from and collaboration with IEA in our work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It will be a pleasure for us to support you as well on the work you are doing, and we'll make sure that we include you in the meetings that we will organize. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We know that for many African countries, it's still a new topic, and there's not much that have been done. But we have some countries that are working on it, especially when you have NDCs to report and you have to track your sustainable development goals, and also it can be really useful to start the development of such indicators. So we have started, for example, for Zambia, we started some bilateral meetings, and they informed us that they had started reporting some data, collecting some data specifically for some for some reports. So there are some countries that are doing some work on it, and we are really interested in knowing what you're doing. And so we have a question from Peter. How could energy and use efficiency be encouraged in Nigeria, especially in rural areas? So it's a bit of a broad question, Yogu.
Yes, thank you for your question. I found in Nigeria, the residential energy consumption is most important. It took about more than 70% in 2019. So maybe the residential sector could be prioritized to be improved because it took most of the total final energy consumption. So maybe you can, depending on the share of the energy used in each residential energy use, for example, space heating or cooking, depending on the share of the energy consumption. That's why we need the more detailed energy collection. So you can prioritize for example, using the more efficient like a boiler for the space heating or water heating, or you can focus on the changing between the fuel used for cooking, for example. That could be the starting point to improve the residential energy efficiency in residential sector. So that's why we encourage you to also that we've highlight the importance of data collection on the end use data in the country. So that will make you understand which sector and which end use or which fuel should be the prioritized in the policy side. So that's why that's the way we can improve the energy efficiency in the country.
Yeah. I think that what's important is also to inform the people, especially in rural areas who don't have access to the information on the importance of having energy efficiency measures. And also the government can give subsidies as well to household to help them, change and use, for example, better, more improved cooking stoves, so that more energy is saved. Yes, I think there are different measures that could be applied to support um, uh, households in rural areas to make the move towards more efficient technologies. Please, if you have other questions, let us know. Then we will move after to the exercise session. No more questions? So if we don't have any more questions, we will move to the last part of the training. We'll look at the exercise on energy efficiency indicators. And thank you, Yungyu, for joining us today for this Q&A session.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, everyone. Hope you
Thank
have
you.
a nice training. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. So I just shared the exercise file. So that was the exercise on energy efficiency indicators. So you have been provided with an energy balance for country A here, with information in terajoules, net calorific values. You have all the products, you have the total column, and you have the different flows. So you have the supply part, you have some transformation and losses, and also total final consumption. So the first question was, calculate 2019 energy intensity for country A, and you are provided with country A GDP. So how do we calculate the energy intensity for a country? You just take the total energy supply, so 22,346, you divide it by your amount of GDP, so by 4,258, and that would give you your energy intensity for 2019, and the answer is 5.25. And then we also provide you with 2010 energy intensity, so that will be used for question 2. So question 2 is, did energy intensity decrease in 2010? If yes, can you say that this is due to improvement in energy efficiency? So here it's again the same concept as you have seen in the presentation. Just with energy intensity, we can see that in 2019 it's lower than 2010, so the intensity has decreased. However, we cannot know only by looking at the energy intensity aggregated indicator that this is due to an improvement in energy efficiency. So a decrease could be due to several reasons. For example, an economical shift towards higher share of less intensive industry and services in the economy. So we need additional disaggregated energy and activity data for all sectors and subsectors or by end users in order to analyze the energy efficiency. So this is really important to emphasize. The question 3 is, now using the activity data in the table below, calculate the best energy efficiency indicator for each of the 4 subsectors below. So here you are provided with some iron and steel production in tons, cement production in tons, the industry value added, the iron and steel sector value added, cement value added, machinery, and other manufacturing. Now we are asking you to calculate the best energy efficiency indicators for iron and steel, cement, machinery, and other manufacturing, and what units you will be using. So here for iron and steel and cement, for those two, you have the activity data, you have your physical production quantities, and so the preferred energy efficiency indicator will use physical productions in tons. So how much energy is required to produce, for example, 1 ton of steel? So here in this case, we will use the gigajoule per ton, and the indicator will be the amount of iron and steel consumption, total iron and steel consumption, divided by your iron and steel production. So that would give you the iron and steel energy intensity. And same for cement. It's the cement production consumption in the energy balance divided by your cement production. But for the other sectors, so for machinery and other manufacturing, we do not have the production values, but we are provided with the value added. And so we will use here value added, which is related to the revenues, and in a certain sense, it's linked to the physical production. And in many heterogeneous sector with less quantifiable products, or that carries many different products such as mining, the value added is the preferred option because there is not a single physical product that is to quantify it. So using value added for efficiency indicators, it brings a noise due to the possibility of having different prices. So how much does 1 ton of my product value in a specific market? And when comparing the energy efficiency calculated with the value added over different years, it's very important to use constant prices value added to remove the inflation noise. So here for machinery, what will we use? We will take the machinery consumption and we will divide it by the machinery value added. And same for other manufacturing, you take your consumption amount and you divide it by other manufacturing value added. And for here for industry, for the total industry sector, you will take your industry consumption divided by your industry value added, iron and steel, the same thing, and cement consumption divided by cement value added. So here we have calculated some energy efficiency indicators for 2019 for question 3. And the last question is, the table below shows energy efficiency indicators based on value added. Calculate the average annual growth or the total growth for each of the sectors. What can you say about energy efficiency improvement in each of these sectors? So here we have the intensity for iron and steel, cement, machinery, and other manufacturing. So you have been provided with the 2010 values. You have to, for 2019, we can use the values up. So here for 35 for iron and steel, 25 for cement, for machinery 0.9, and other manufacturing as we have calculated up. And here we have to calculate the compound average growth rate. And here the formula, it's not a simple growth rate, it's the compound average growth rate. Here you take your value for 2019, you divide it by your value in 2010, and you put it to the power of the year 2019 minus the year 2010 minus 1. And that would give you your compound average growth rate for iron and steel. It's the same formula for cement, machinery, and other manufacturing. So what do we notice here? It's that all sectors except cement have witnessed a decrease in energy intensity, probably due to energy efficiency improvement. That is either retrofit of existing plants or the beginning of operation of a new and more efficient plants. The cement sector, it witnessed an increase in energy efficient intensity of around 2% per year since 2010. And this could be due to the aging of the plants, but also to other factors, such as the country was previously importing more clinker, which is the raw material used for cement production, and is now producing it in the country, which increased the energy demand for its production. And the other manufacturing sector, if we don't have any further specification of what is included, it can include different sectors. And so a big shift in structure, or that is the change in a big shift in the energy in the subsectors that are part of the manufacturing sector, it could affect the energy intensity of the sector. So that was the exercise on energy efficiency. It gave you a bit of an idea of what you could calculate using the energy balance, but also using all these additional information on activity, using value added, and what kind of indicators you can calculate in the country. I hope that it has been useful to you. Again, I can only encourage you to try to work it out by yourself, and let me know if you have some doubts or any question. Just send me an email. And that was it for today. I hope that it was interesting for you to discover, if you have not before worked on energy prices and energy efficiency indicators. But these are very important topics that we need to tackle. And with this, I think if there's no questions for me, I don't see any question. So I think we can close the session for today. I wish you all a nice weekend, And I hope that next week with Arnaud you will enjoy the modeling sessions, and also happy holidays to all of you for next week again. Thank you. So if you don't have any questions, I think we can close here. No questions? We have someone who raised his hand. Mr. Ahmad Amin, you have something to say?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, my question is to do with the Eid al-Adha holidays we have in Nigeria. On the
Yes.
20th, I think 21st, it will be a public holiday here. Are you going
Yes.
to conduct the training
No.
or?
No. During the holidays, there will be no training. So Arnaud Arnaud Rouget, who's coordinating the program with me. So I'm in
Yeah.
charge of the statistics part. He's in charge of the modeling part, and he will get back to you with so there will be no training during the holidays in Nigeria.
Okay.
So you don't need
Okay.
to connect on that day, and we will adapt the agenda according to the holidays. So when
Okay.
we had set the agenda, it was not yet known the exact dates for the
Yes.
holidays because of the moon, but this is going to be taken into account. You won't need to work during your public holiday. No worries
Okay.
about that.
Okay, Zakia. Thank you very much.
No
Have a
problem.
nice day. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.